One day, my friend Mia and I decided to go fishing at a dam in Okudama, Tokyo. It's a bit of a hike to get to the fishing spot, but the fishing conditions there are actually very good. It's a fishing spot that only locals go to, so we decided to go fishing there with some effort. We were fully equipped and arrived at midnight with the plan to fish until dawn. But for some reason, I couldn't catch anything that day. So, I hung a bell on the fishing rod and left it there to chat with Mia and relax. Not long after, the fishing rod I left there made a bell sound. I quickly grabbed the rod, but the fish seemed to have escaped because there was no pulling force at all. I thought I would change the bait first, so I started to reel in the fishing line. However, when I was reeling in the line, I felt something strange because the fishing rod seemed to be entangled in something. I thought to myself, could it be entangled in water plants? It wasn't until I reeled in all the fishing lines that I realized it wasn't water plants at all. It was a bunch of human hair that was 30 centimeters long. Mia and I were so terrified when we saw the hair that we couldn't make a sound. I was even more scared reflexively. I threw the fishing rod away. Even though that bunch of hair was really disgusting, the rod was very expensive, so I had to bear it and go back to pick it up, and then cut off the lost line. Although it was still some time before dawn, we had no mood to continue fishing because of that bunch of hair. We left the scene as if we were fleeing. On the way back to the city, we talked about the hair and started telling each other ghost stories as if to kill time. As we talked, the fear gradually faded. I even thought that what happened just now was quite interesting and it would be a good topic to share with others in the future. After that, we drove for a while and suddenly Gong, who was sitting in the passenger seat, became quiet and stopped talking. So I said, "Why are you sleeping over there while asking me to drive?" After I said that, I glanced at him and I found that he was not sleeping at all, but looking out the window with a pale face. Because his face was pale, I asked him, "Are you feeling unwell?" He replied, "Hey, let me ask you a question. What happened? There is a woman standing on the sidewalk. Did you see her?" "Ah, where?" I asked. "It's not a question of where, but that she has been there the whole time," Gong said. Gong claimed that there had been a woman standing over there watching us since a while ago. After I heard it, I originally thought that Gong was deliberately trying to scare me, but I still couldn't help looking over to the sidewalk. After looking over there, I also became scared because there really was a woman standing there. Just like Gong said, the woman was standing on the sidewalk and looking over at us. I turned my head to look at Gong. He didn't say anything, but just stared at me silently and nodded. We knew very well that we had seen each other. After that, we saw the woman appear on the side of the road more than 20 times from the mountain road to when we drove into the city. During that time, the two of us were completely silent and didn't talk all the way. We just drove home like that. Later, after I dropped Gong off at his doorstep, I stared at the rearview mirror with a feeling of uneasiness in my head, and then I finally made it home. After I got home, I was too lazy to pack my things, so I just got into the quilt and went to sleep. I don't know how long I slept, but I was suddenly woken up by my mother. My mother asked me with a serious expression, "What's wrong with your cooler?" I answered, "No, I didn't catch anything today. When I came back, there was nothing in it." But my mother said, "Take a look for yourself." I opened the cooler box while yawning, and as soon as I opened it, I saw that a bunch of hair that I had clearly cut and thrown away was actually in the cooler box. I was so scared. I didn't know why the hair was in the cooler box. Later, I sent the entire cooler box and the hair to a nearby temple and disposed of it. Nothing strange happened afterwards. But to this day, when I think of the appearance of that hair, I still get goosebumps all over my body. If you're enjoying the video, please subscribe the channel for future videos and like and share with your friends. I have a friend who was born somewhere in Kyushu. His family runs some large-scale businesses and is considered wealthy. He moved to Tokyo when he was in college and has lived there ever since. After graduation, my friend didn't want to work in the family business. Instead, he planned to save money quickly and do what he wanted. He has an outstanding appearance and knows how to get along with others, so he decided to work in a male escort shop. That guy used to have a very refreshing and sunny short haircut, but since he started working in the male escort shop, he started to grow his hair long. When I met him during that period, I was really surprised to see him with long hair. It seemed more charming. But I was also curious why he suddenly wanted to grow his hair long, so I asked him. He told me it was because the store manager wanted him to grow his hair long to look better and do better business. He also told me that there was a reason why he had short hair in the past. It was a rule passed down from his family. The men in his family were not allowed to grow their hair below their shoulders. If a man grew his hair longer than his shoulders, something bad would happen. The women in the family would take a portion of their hair cut off and offer it to the ancient shrine in their hometown. In the past, he followed the family rule, but now he didn't care about that kind of rule. He just thought it was superstition. And to him, those rules were not important because he just wanted to make money quickly. After that party, we each lived our own lives. About half a year later, we took time to meet again. At that time, his hair was back to its previous sunny short hair. I asked him why he cut his long hair off. He told me, "I told you about the family rule in my hometown before. That's why I cut it off." He said that he ignored the family rule at that time and continued to grow his hair long. Later, when his hair was longer than his shoulders, some terrible things started to happen. His shoulders and back started to itch. At first, he thought it was just a skin allergy. But one day, when he was taking a shower, he touched his shoulder and found many small raised bubbles. They felt like closed comedones, which were a bit painful and itchy, but he didn't take it seriously and bought some medicine to apply. However, the situation did not improve, and he also started to have some very strange nightmares. In the dream, he would see himself from a third-person perspective, sitting in a room with his upper body exposed. Then there was a long-haired female shadow sitting behind him and whispering quickly, but he couldn't hear what she was saying clearly. Then, the female shadow cut his hair while sewing something on his back. The reason he felt that something was being sewn was because he could feel something like a needle and thread hooking back and forth on his back. At first, he just thought that he had that kind of dream because of the pressure caused by the bubbles on his back recently. Until one day, he woke up and took a selfie with his mobile phone, wanting to take a picture of his back. But he saw in the photo that the things on his shoulders and back were getting bigger and bigger, a bit like pustules, but they didn't seem to be ripe or burst, just getting more and more swollen. After that, day by day, the number of pustules became more and more, and they became bigger and bigger. So one day, while he was on vacation, he went to Saitama Prefecture to visit his aunt, who was a nurse. He asked his aunt if this condition was a skin disease. After seeing the condition of his back, his aunt had a strange expression on her face, but she didn't say anything. She just told him to go to the hospital where she worked the next day for a checkup. On the night after visiting his aunt, he couldn't sleep the whole night because he felt like there was something wriggling in the abscesses on his back. The next day, when he arrived at the hospital, the doctor took a look and said that they had to make a small incision to drain the pus. The doctor spoke very easily at that time, but he felt a strong sense of uneasiness. Later, when the operating light was shown on his back, the doctor and the nurse deliberately lowered their voices. The doctor asked why it was so deep and it should not be an ordinary cyst. "Wait, what is this?" At that time, his heart was pounding, and he couldn't help asking what was wrong. The doctor didn't answer but just told him not to move. Later, he saw the doctor pick up the pliers and seemed to pull something out of the wound on his back, little by little. Then he saw the doctor holding a thick and long black hair in his hand, with a little blood and tissue fluid on it. And it wasn't just one strand, but a whole bunch. It was like someone's hair was planted in his back. When he looked at the hair, he suddenly remembered the weird dream he had been having every night. The doctor also frowned, looked at the hair in his hand, and asked him why the hair grew in such a place. "Did you do some hair transplant surgery before?" He shook his head. Later, the doctor took out the hair from several abscesses on his back. Even the doctor found it very weird. After that, his friend took the initiative to ask the doctor to stop the operation because he probably knew that he had violated the family taboo. After seeing the doctor that day, he rushed back to his hometown. After returning to his hometown, his family immediately found a nearby god for him, performed a haircutting ceremony, and offered the cut hair to the mysterious shrine in his hometown. The next day, he couldn't carry the abscesses on his back, and they all disappeared. Then he didn't dream about that dream again. As for why their family was restricted by that rule, He said he didn't know the details. He only roughly knew that their family's ancestors reached an agreement with some kind of gods in order to make the family's textile business prosperous. In short, that was the responsibility that their family had to bear from generation to generation. Later, from that time on, I never saw him with long hair again. Let me tell you about something I saw in Kyoto. It happened a long time ago, but I still remember it vividly. When I was a student, I lived in Kitaajidori. Since I rented a house, there was no bathroom in the room, so I always went to the public bathhouse to take a bath. But I was very poor at that time. To save the cost of the bathhouse, I rode my bicycle almost every night to my sister's house in Shijo Omiya to take a bath. It was around 11 o'clock in the evening. One night, I was riding my bicycle past Nijo Castle when I saw a woman in front of the castle. At first, I thought she was a jogger and didn't pay much attention. But as I got closer, I began to feel something was odd. The woman and I were facing the same direction. I approached her from behind, but I always felt that she wasn't moving forward. Instead, she seemed to be moving backward, slowly approaching me. I thought her way of practicing was really novel, but as I rode closer, I realized she wasn't wearing sportswear. I couldn't quite remember her clothes later, but what stuck with me was her thick, long black hair that reached about her waist. She didn't have any bags or anything. Her appearance and the way she walked backward looked really weird. She didn't look like a jogger at all. But because she was there alive, I didn't think she was a ghost, just a weirdo. I didn't want to have anything to do with weirdos, so I increased my speed and planned to pass her quickly. Finally, I rode next to her. Then, the moment I passed by her, I couldn't help but look back. I started scanning from under her feet. Her toes were facing me, and I naturally moved my eyes upward. But when I looked at her face, I was shocked because all I saw was a whole piece of long black hair hanging down from the top of her head. She looked like Sadako from the movie, but even her eyes couldn't be seen. Seeing this weird scene, I got goosebumps all over my body. I thought, how could someone have a head full of hair? So thick it covered the whole head? At that moment, I quickly turned my sight back to the front and rode my bicycle as hard as I could and ran away. Along the way, I kept thinking about what that thing was. Later, I was really scared when I saw that strange thing. But after that, I still went to my sister's house often to take a shower because I had no money. However, I changed the time to go out a little earlier, or I would change the route to avoid that area. So, I never saw the same thing again. This is the scariest thing I have ever seen. I don't know whether that thing was a person or a ghost, but I was really scared to death at the time. This happened to me a while ago. At that time, I was just about to switch to a better company. The new company paid well, and my future life was looking up. I thought that if I worked hard for a few more years, I could marry my boyfriend and live a happy life. But just when I was immersed in that fantasy, my boyfriend got into the bad habit of gambling. He was immersed in gambling all day long and was unwilling to work hard or have any ambition. So we often quarreled because he borrowed money from me for gambling. In the end, we broke up. After the breakup, I cut my long hair that I had kept for a long time. My mentality was that at least I had better development in my work, and as long as I had money, I didn't need to rely on men. Then came the first day of work in the new company. I went to work happily with the mentality of starting a new life. The supervisor took me to greet my colleagues and then took me to my seat. But when I got to my seat, my supervisor and I saw a pile of strange long hair on the table. There were quite a lot of them. We were both stunned when we saw it. The supervisor apologized to me and said, "I'm really sorry. This table is not cleaned. Please take some time to tidy up your seat first." Then the supervisor left. After that, I cleaned up the long hair on the table, but when I opened the drawer, there was also a pile of long hair inside. At that time, I was thinking who sat in this seat before so that their hair would fall out and they didn't clean it up. Later, I cleaned it up and started working. That's how I spent the first day. The next day, when I arrived at the company and took my seat, I found some obvious long hairs on the floor of my seat. Although I am a little bit of a germaphobe, I didn't care much and just thought it might be the hair of other colleagues. so I cleaned it up myself and started working. However, in the days that followed, long hairs that didn't belong to me would still appear on my seat every day. At first, they appeared on the desk, then in the gap between the keyboard, and then there were a few long hairs under the mouse. Sometimes, I would even get some long hair stuck on my body when I got home. But as time went on, I began to feel a little irritated. I wiped my chair with alcohol every day and changed my chair cushions. I would also complain to my colleagues in the office who I had a good relationship with, asking if someone was deliberately messing with me when I was not around, but they all just smiled awkwardly and didn't say anything. Until one day at noon, I met a senior who I didn't know well in the tea room. He saw me cleaning up a few long hairs that fell on my clothes. He suddenly whispered, "Are you sitting by the window, in the second to last row?" I nodded. He was silent for a moment and then said, "You saw the hair on your first day at work, right? I suggest you change seats." He left after saying that, leaving me confused. However, I stayed in the company to work overtime that night, and something strange happened. I was the only one left in the office that day. I was sitting at my desk and working hard. Suddenly, I felt something itchy at my feet, as if there was something there. So I looked under the table, and I saw something that looked like a wig. I was shocked when I saw a long hair slowly emerging from my feet. But then the hair suddenly shrank back. I immediately bent down to look but didn't see anything. Later, I encountered several strange things. Once, when I was using the toilet in the company bathroom, I suddenly felt something on my upper left. I turned my head and looked up and saw a strand of long hair hanging there, and then it slowly slid into the next room. I was so scared that I ran out immediately, but when I ran out and looked, I found that there was no one next door. But just a while ago, I was alone in front of the computer in the office at night, dozing off while working, and I accidentally fell asleep. When I woke up, I found that I was almost lying on the keyboard. When I pushed aside the hair hanging on the keyboard and was about to get up, I suddenly remembered something that gave me goosebumps all over my body. Ever since I cut my hair short after a breakup, I have always kept the long hairstyle, but the hair that I pushed aside on the keyboard just now felt very long. At that moment, I remembered what the senior said, and I began to feel weird and scared. I felt a chill, and disgusting sweat broke out on my face, so I hurriedly fled the office. Later, I took the train home. On the train, I held onto the hanging ring with my hands. I was almost falling asleep and was dazed looking at the scenery outside. Inadvertently, I looked at the glass on the train window and saw my reflection. While looking at myself, I thought, I look really good with long hair. At that moment, I felt a sense of disobedience. Long hair. Don't I have short hair now? But at this moment, I looked at myself reflected in the window and I really had long hair. I suddenly woke up from my daze and took a closer look. I was scared to death because the long hair was not mine at all. It was someone standing behind me, and his outline was subtly close to my own outline, so the hair overlapped, making it look like I had long hair. I immediately turned around to look, but there was no one behind me. Then I turned my head back and looked at the reflection in the window again. I had short hair again. At that moment I thought, maybe I was too tired today and I saw it wrong. But I still cared a lot, so the next day, I secretly checked the company records. I wanted to know who had occupied my seat before, but the record of that seat seemed to have been erased and I couldn't find any name. I asked my supervisor, and the other party stammered and said, that seat had been vacant for a long time. It's nothing, because I felt that my supervisor's attitude was a little strange. So at noon that day, I went to find the senior who reminded me to change my seat. The senior told me that there was a girl named Kojima in the past. Her work ability was not very good and she often made mistakes. So after she joined the company, she worked overtime almost every day. In less than half a year, she died in the office due to overwork. Because that seat was too sensitive, no one dared to sit in it, so it was allocated to the person who had just joined the company, which is the seat you are sitting now. After listening to what my senior told me, I began to think back to the situation after I joined the company. Since I joined this company, my work has not been smooth. I often make some inexplicable low-level mistakes that I have never made before, or there will be emergencies in the cases I am responsible for. so I often work overtime until very late. When I work overtime at night, I always feel that my mind is a mess, or I am in a state of lack of energy and distraction, and my work efficiency is extremely poor. I wonder if it is related to this kind of thing, so after the lunch break that day, I wanted to change my seat. At that time, I went to ask my supervisor for a change of seat. My supervisor had a look of being accustomed to it, and immediately arranged a new seat for me. After changing my seat that day, I also felt that my state was different from before. The blockage in my brain disappeared, and I was no longer absent-minded when working overtime at night. After working overtime that day, when I turned off the lights and prepared to leave the office, I looked back into the office. In the darkness, I seemed to see the dark outline of a long-haired woman. She was sitting in that position. One day, my friend Shota from the university club said to me, "I'm moving. Can you help me?" He said he'd treat me to sushi as a thank you, and since he'd helped me out a lot before, I agreed right away. On moving day, Shota, my friends Yuma and Takuya, and I, all from the club, finished the move together. That night, the four of us drank, ate sushi, and chatted casually, then crashed on the floor. The next morning, Yuma, Takuya, and I took the train home together. I still remember that on the way home, Takuya joked that there was a shrine next to Shota's room, so I wondered if anything weird would happen. About a week later, we were eating together in the school cafeteria when Yuma asked Shota if he was used to living in his new place. Shota replied, "Yeah, the house is pretty big and close to the station, so it's not bad." But his tone was a little hesitant, like he had something to say but didn't want to. So I joked and asked him, "What's up? Is there anything strange?" He replied, "It's not a big deal, just that long hair often appears on the ground." We joked and asked him, "Did you secretly bring girls home? Maybe it was brought back from outside." We didn't take it too seriously because, under normal circumstances, if you see hair that isn't yours on the ground, you usually don't care too much. Shota also said that apart from this, nothing else happened. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But after a while, Shota began to look tired and even a little haggard. He still came to school normally, so he shouldn't be sick. We thought maybe he had some troubles that caused him to have trouble sleeping or something, so Yuma, Takuya, and I asked him out for a drink and wanted to chat with him. That day, we asked him while drinking, "What's wrong with you lately? Is there anything?" Shota said, "You may not believe it even if I tell you, but didn't I tell you before? Do you often have hair falling on the floor at home? I originally thought it was brought back from outside, but it seems strange no matter how I think about it. If it was brought back from outside, the length should be different, right? But the lengths of those hairs are almost the same, and they're not only on the floor, but also in cups, toilets, and bathrooms. And recently, the frequency and quantity of hair appearing have increased, making it impossible for me to feel at ease at home. I always feel very hairy." After hearing this, we were still skeptical and didn't quite believe the strange thing, so we told Shota that maybe he was just getting more and more sensitive the more he thought about it. But Shota said seriously, "No, it's not like that. It's really weird." At this point, Takuya suddenly said, "How about this? Let's go to your house and take a look." Shota agreed immediately. He thought we would understand after we went there. So the four of us left the izakaya and went to Shota's rental place together. When we got to Shota's place, all of us were dumbfounded because, just as Shota said, there were hairs everywhere in the room, and Shota said that these hairs didn't exist before he went out. At this point, Takuya seemed very interested in this situation. He said, "Let's collect these hairs and take a look, measure the length and look at the color." I also thought it was a good idea at that time, so I took Yuma to start collecting. After about 10 minutes, we collected all the visible hair, put it on a piece of white paper, and checked the color and length. We first picked out the obvious curly hair, and the remaining hair looked heavier and heavier. In that depressing atmosphere, Yuma whispered, "This feels like the same person, right?" Indeed, no matter the length, color, or touch, from our point of view, these hairs looked like they belonged to the same person, so everyone could only nod in agreement. Takuya said that this didn't seem good. As a result, Shota started to panic. He asked us what to do, But because I have never seen a ghost or had any supernatural experiences, I didn't think about it at first. I insisted that there must be a scientific explanation. So I told Shota that ghosts are not so easy to appear, and these hairs are real, there must be a reason. Later that day, it was already very late, so we decided to investigate in detail another day and planned to leave first. However, just as we were walking towards the entrance, Yuma suddenly turned pale and pointed to the bathroom and said, "There." We walked over and saw that there was a large clump of hair dropped in the bathroom, about the amount that could be grabbed by one hand. At that moment, I got goosebumps all over my body. The four of us rushed out the door as if we were running for our lives and ran to a nearby family restaurant. After we calmed down a little, we started discussing the hair we had just seen. We had clearly just picked up all the hair in the room, so even if we had missed some, we couldn't have missed such a large clump. In other words, that large clump of hair appeared in the short time when we picked up all the hair and were about to leave. But there were only 4 of us in the house, and we would definitely know if someone came in from outside, so this was too weird. We stayed in the family restaurant that day until almost dawn. Shota didn't dare to go back alone, so he went home with Yuma and then went to catch up on our sleep. In the evening, not long after I woke up, I received a text message from Yuma saying that we would meet at the family restaurant at 7 p.m. After the 4 of us met again, we discussed what to do next and finally decided to go to Shota's house to see what was going on. When we arrived at his house, Shota opened the door. The moment he opened the door, each of us tensed up because as soon as the door was opened, we saw a few hairs on the floor of the entrance. Then we went to check the bathroom, and the large clump of hair from yesterday was still there. Other places seemed to be unchanged, but the toilet and kitchen corridor still had new hairs. At that point, I was so scared that I thought to myself, please, this is a dream or some show is playing a prank on us. Later, when we finished checking the part outside the room and were finally about to enter the room, Shota suddenly gasped. I asked him what was wrong. He pointed to a place in the room and stared at that place. Yuma, Takuya, and I immediately turned our heads to look over there. The place he pointed to was on the table. There were the hairs we collected yesterday, but we didn't see anything. I said to Shota, I didn't see anything. At this point, Takuya suddenly said in a trembling voice, at the window, the upper half of the balcony window is transparent glass, and the lower half is frosted glass. I looked over and saw nothing in the upper half, only the clothes drying rack. But when I looked at the lower half, I got annoying sweat on my head and didn't dare to move my whole body because the lower half was frosted glass, and there was a woman sitting cross-legged on the ground over there. And even though it was frosted glass, you could see that she had long hair and was wearing a white dress. At that moment, I intuitively thought that these hairs should be hers. At that moment, I felt all the blood in my body sink to the soles of my feet. The 4 of us didn't dare to scream. We just dragged our shaking legs and quietly left Shota's room. After that, Shota stayed in our homes in turn until he moved. Since we all saw that thing with our own eyes, no one objected. Shota moved away soon after, and everything returned to normal. Shota is now living a normal life, but he is still very sensitive to the hair on the ground. As for whether there is a connection between the shrine next door and who that woman is, it is still a mystery to us.